Hey guys, welcome back to the Bay Area Sports Addiction. My name is Alex, and today we have Gavin joining us.
How's it going?
Uh, for those of you that don't know, Gavin's one of my friends. He's a big Bengals fan, and we're going to start off talking about the championship weekend a couple weekends ago. Uh, Gavin, what went wrong in that AFC Championship game for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, as everyone knows, the Bengals lost and the Niners lost. It was a tough day. I actually got to watch the game with Chapel at Golden State Tap Room. Starting with the Bengals, I think it was kind of the inevitable. They had a pretty good run at their offensive line against the Bills, and then kind of crumbled. Chris Jones got behind the line a few times, and I think that was the big problem with the Bengals in that game. Joe Burrow got hit a couple times, ultimately throwing two picks, one which was at the end of the game. Um, but what people don't realize with the offense line that game is we had no run game. When you saw the offense clicking for the Bengals against the Bills, you had Mixon running for 100 yards. We pretty much looked unstoppable. And then in that Chiefs game, our leading rusher was Burrow with 30 yards, and he got all 30 of those yards just by scrambling for his life in the pocket. It's pretty funny too if you've seen that clip of this guy really took Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, and it's Chris Jones running the 40 and falling straight on his face, and we don't even have linemen that can stop him. Ultimately, obviously, he's a really good player, but at the same time, our offensive line kind of just crumbled on the running game, and I think that hurt us more than Joe Burrow having to scramble. Um, and then lastly, at the end of the day, you got to give it credit to Patrick Mahomes. That at the end of the day, he's the one that beat us. I think that's going to be a nice rivalry for the next few years, but um, I would be ignorant to say Joe Burrow is going to end up 4-0 against Patrick Mahomes. It's probably going to even itself out. I think Joe Burrow is going to win some more matchups in big games, but the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is the number one quarterback in the league right now for a reason. So he ultimately was the death of us, playing on one hobbled ankle. So you kind of got to give it to the man.
Yeah, he just won NFL MVP yesterday at the
Yep.
NFL Honors as well.
I was surprised Joe Burrow didn't get a single vote and Josh Allen did, but at the same time, I think Patrick Mahomes could have easily won that unanimous as well. But
hmm Yeah, I mean, he's like very clearly the best player in the NFL.
yeah,
Like,
there's
it's
people talking about him possibly being the greatest of all time if he wins this Super Bowl. And obviously that's premature and they're just trying to start a narrative because obviously Tom Brady, no one can come close to him right now. He has more Super Bowls than any franchise. Um, but uh, yeah, he's far and away the best player right now. And I think my bias wants to say Burrows too, with Josh Allen right behind him. But I think there's a big gap until Burrow gets a Super Bowl or somebody else gets two. Um, but it's a new age in quarterback, so I mean the door is wide open for somebody to step in and compete with him. Given he only has one, we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl though.
hmm yeah, the I agree. I think that's going to be a matchup for years to come. That Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes are going to see each other a few more times in the playoffs throughout their
Yeah.
career.
What do you think went wrong with your Niners in the NFC Championship? We got to watch that game together, and it was a lot of emotion at first, and it kind of just all went downhill.
Yeah, it was pretty. I don't even really know how to describe it. Like we, it felt like we didn't really have a shot. On our first drive, Brock Purdy obviously tears his UCL. Um,
Yeah.
that play, there's a lot of controversy. I know at the time I was really pissed because they showed the replay and Tyler Croft is blocking Hassan Reddick. Like
Yeah.
this guy's in the defensive player of the year conversation, 16 sacks, and our backup tight end, maybe third string tight end, is blocking him. But, after the emotions kind of died down and actually dove into like the mechanics behind like a play action, tight ends normally block defensive ends because that's what they do in the run game, and you're trying to fake that out. And it just happened to be a play where Hassan Reddick didn't fall for the run, and he
Hmm.
just went and he took off and took Brock Purdy's arm with him. So
Yeah. That's what you get for using an ex-Bengal, Tyler Croft. He's an ex-Bengal. We drafted him late.
yeah, but that was the main, like, at that point is you kind of got the feeling like, oh, like we're not even gonna have like a real like. I know that in lately in the press, the 49ers players and coaching staff has gotten a little bit of heat for basically whining about the game and just complaining that, oh, like we would have won, like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of see why that looks bad on us. Obviously, look like sore losers, but also it seems like the 49ers sound players thought that they had a game plan that was going to absolutely destroy the Eagles, and we just didn't even get a chance to see any of that. Um, Halfway through the second quarter, it's 7-7 with Josh Johnson in there. And then after we scored that touchdown with Christian McCaffrey, then it kind of started going downhill. They go down, score a touchdown. We get the ball back. Josh Johnson fumbles a snap after 2 delay of game penalties. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's happening when you're on your 4th quarterback that you signed during week 14 of the NFL season.
Yeah.
So I think from a fan's perspective, it was just gut wrenching to watch because you kind of felt like you didn't get a fair shot. And personally, I was super excited to watch the 2 best fully rounded rosters in the NFL go at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot you can do. Their offensive line was amazing. Their defensive line was amazing. So I'm not going to make excuses saying, oh, like if Brock Purdy was healthy, we definitely would have won. It's just the fact that we didn't really even have a shot that kind of
Yeah. I think
is the
that hurts.
downer.
That hurts almost more than the Bengals player pushing a guy out at the end of the game and losing that way, just not knowing if you even had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen a lot of people. Actually, I saw a George Kittle interview because they have all those players at the Super Bowl interviewing, and I thought it was interesting. He said for sure it's Brock Purdy's job to lose when healthy because Trey Lance hasn't got a fair shot yet, which he hasn't. I mean, he played in the he said he played in the monsoon game and then got hurt week 2, so that'll be an interesting thing to look forward to. I don't know if you even as a 49ers fan want to look forward to that battle. You wish you kind of just knew who your guy was,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that'll be an interesting play in the NFL next year, just considering everything the Niners have, being one of the most well-rounded team, and even if you guys lose some players on defense, this and that, you're still going to be one of the most well-rounded teams next year. So whoever wins that job is going to be really interesting to see how the offense kind of merges around that
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, whether it is Brock Purdy or Trey Lance.
Yeah, I personally am excited for it. I know there was news that Brock Purdy plans on getting a hybrid surgery, so it's not going to be Tommy John.
Okay.
Uh, it's not a reconstruction. It's just a repair of the UCL, and that's supposed to be on February 22nd, and it's supposed to only be a 6-month recovery instead of 9 to 12 with Tommy John. So with that timetable, he should be around for training camp, and hopefully he's thrown by then. I'm gonna look forward to this just being a QB competition because, like you mentioned, Trey Lance didn't really seem like he got a fair shot to actually run the team and the offense like
Yeah.
for a whole. He got a game and a half this year, and he came in as a backup last year, a couple games
Yeah.
when Jimmy was out.
Yeah, I can for sure see at the end of the day, Brock Purdy is probably going to end up being your starter at first. And it's one of those things where if Trey Lance can pick it up in practice and really get working, and like you guys go on like I don't think you guys will ever be on a bad skid next year just because, like I said, your roster is so well rounded. But if you guys see yourself kind of getting complacent with Brock maybe after he has a bigger sample size, then I could see him maybe bringing in Trey Lance. But I agreed with everything Kittle said. It's 100% Brock Purdy's job to lose, and that's huge. I didn't know that he was getting the hybrid surgery because, as we know, as baseball fans too. I mean, Tommy John can be the end of somebody's career, and a quarterback throws the ball just as much as a pitcher. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think why they ended up doing that is because a lot of times for pitchers, it's because they've been throwing the ball so much. It's like a wear and tear injury, and then it just they need the surgery after a while because their UCL is all beat up. Whereas for Brock Purdy, it was like he's throwing a ball, his arm just got ripped back, and so it was just like a clean tear instead of due to degradation over time. So I think that's probably why they opted for that.
Cool. Where
Um,
do you think you guys go from there? I know we're already kind of talking about it. So for next year, obviously you mentioned the quarterback battle. You're going to be excited for that. That's just going to kind of work itself out.
mhm.
But other than the quarterback scenario, where do you think the Niners can kind of go from there, and just kind of build on that already pretty well-rounded roster that you guys have?
Yeah, so the 49ers obviously lost D'Amico Ryans, now the head coach of the Houston Texans. Um, he won assistant coach of the year at the NFL honors as well. And we hired Steve Wilks as his replacement. He was the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, ended up being the interim head coach, went 6-6 as their interim head coach. And I love this hire. He was also formerly a head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, but from what I've heard, he is a very likable guy in the locker room. The players want to play for him, similar to D'Amico Ryans. Um, he's a great leader and runs a 4-3 scheme, which is what the 49ers run as well. So that's obviously a great plus. And then other than the coaching staff and obviously the QB competition that we were talking about before, free agency is going to be big for the 49ers. Um, they have a few guys on the offensive line that are up for new deals. Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, Daniel Brunskill, Jake Brendel in the middle. So we're going to have to look for some offensive line talent, whether we end up re-signing those guys or we may be finding new guys. But our offensive line last year was pretty solid, considering it was a little bit uncertain going into the year. We do have uh, guys like Aaron Banks who stepped up. Obviously, Trent Williams, best left tackle in football, and uh, I think we're also going to have to look at finding safeties and defensive line depth.
One guy you guys could look for is Jesse Bates is for sure gone from the Bengals.
Mhm.
He's done. He cried in the locker room after his last game. It was definitely a farewell tour. So that's a guy that's definitely on the Niners' radar who's a playmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the I know Tashawn Gibson is a free agent. Jimmy Ward as well, who was formerly a free safety in the past. He spent 9 years with the Niners, and this year he ended up playing nickel a lot.
Hmm.
And he ended up being pretty good at that position. And according to Jimmy Ward, he was saying that the 49ers and John Lynch were telling him that if he wanted to come back and play nickel, he'd probably be the highest paid nickel in the league with the 49ers. But
Wow.
that all kind of depends on what Jimmy Ward wants to do, whether he wants to go back to playing free safety.
Yeah.
And then D line depth, obviously, Javon Kinlow's option's probably not going to be picked up. He had like the NFL prototype body for a defensive tackle in the middle, a big 4-3 run stopper, and he just couldn't stay healthy. Um, we're also going to be losing. Well, Samson Ebukam is up for a new deal. Jordan Willis was getting snaps in at the DN position as well. I We're going to have to reload on defense. I know our core players and our scheme is really good, so I think that's going to be like a saving grace for our defense, but we are going to have to reload some guys in free agency. Um, what do you think about the Bengals? What do you think they need to do to reload to get back to where they were this year?
Yeah, surprisingly, I don't think free agency wise the Bengals are going to really hit the offense line market, given that our center, right guard, and right tackle all are under contract. They just happen to all get hurt, and they did pick up Jonah Williams, our left tackle's fifth-year option, and then at left guard we had that rookie Cordell Volson. So I think we're going to probably draft some more linemen just to so that what just to add more depth, so that if there is injuries again we can actually plug in people that we want to plug in rather than piecing to something together at the end. Um, Big thing for the Bengals, obviously, um, same with the Chargers, is structuring Joe Burrow's contract. I think they're going to need to sign that big contract coming up soon and make it top heavy. So I saw a mock contract for Burrow where it was 8 years, 400 million, which rounds out to 50 million a year, which is insane, but it's something they're going to have to do. But with only getting paid around 20 million in those first 2 years, just to try to get that have that rookie contract window a little bit larger, which is something huge. And then Higgins, Boyd, and Chase are all under contract, along with Mixon. But I can see them moving on from Mixon actually. I was looking at that graph of Super Bowl winning teams and how much they pay their running backs over the last like 15 years, and I think the most paid was like 2 million. So it just kind of goes to show running back by committee um, is kind of the way to go, especially unless you have a Derrick Henry. And I think Mixon is up there when it comes to running backs, but he's not Derrick Henry or Nick Chubb or Saquon. And I think everyone kind of saw what Samaje Perine did when he was hurt as well. So it goes to show like, hey, it's not necessarily the running back; it's more of the scheme. Um, and then you were talking a little bit about your coaches. So we actually just got to keep our offensive coordinator who Burrow loves, Brian Callahan. He ended up not getting the job. Forgot where it was in Carolina. He was like last three left, so he just announced today he's coming back, which is huge for us. But our D coordinator, who I think is our MVP of the year, is Lou. He is in the top two for the Cardinals now. He's one of the final two. So that will be a big hit. So something I've always just thought the Bengals with this new age, because you used to not have to worry about people poaching Bengals coaches because I mean we've been historically mid or bad. They just need to be able to train the coaches behind them to really get into Zach Taylor's game plan. Um, just so that if we do lose offense coordinators, defense coordinators, or even quarterback coaches and whatnot, they need to be prepared to have somebody fill in and keep the train rolling. Um,
Are you more of a Zach Taylor fan now?
I am. I was sussed out even after a Super Bowl appearance, but the one thing that made me switch on a dime was Joe Burrow said he wanted him there, and Joe Burrow's one of those guys in the locker room where it's like Bengals are lucky to have him. He's going to end up being the best Bengal of all time, excluding like Anthony Munoz, who's you can't really compare him. He's debatably the best lineman ever. Um, but uh, if Joe Burrow says something, it goes in that locker room because they're lucky to have him there. And if he wants Zach there, then I think everyone else does too. It kind of shows in the locker room too. Um, but lastly, our defense. We actually have a lot of free agents. Eli Apple's gone, thank God. I think we're gonna we kind of hit a home run with that Cam Taylor Britt, our other corner.
Hmm.
He came on late in the year because he missed 8 games due to a surgery in the offseason. But he's a hard worker. He'll be there. Hopefully, we re-sign a Wouzier. He was a big part and the reason why we had to start Eli Apple every game. And then, like I said, somebody that's definitely on the Niners' radar, Jesse Bates is going to be gone, along with Von Bell. Um, and surprisingly, I would rather have the Bengals sign Von Bell because the Bengals did draft Dax Hill in the first round, of safety out of Michigan last year, in preparation for Jesse Bates to be gone. So kind of have that duo, and it's one of those things when you're going to pay a quarterback that much, you got to run with your draft picks. You can't just sign everyone in free agency. Um,
Hmm.
and then lastly, so the Bengals run a 5-2, so they only have two linebackers. So when you don't have good linebackers in that scheme, things can fall apart quick. And the Bengals are lucky to have Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, who can do both, hit the hole and also cover. They're keeping Logan Wilson, who was the defensive anchor on all those Josh Allen Wyoming teams, but Jermaine Pratt contract is actually up, and I think the Bengals need to do what they can to sign him because having a mediocre linebacker when you're only running a two linebacker scheme um, can really hurt you up the middle, and I think that's part of the reason why we've been so good against the Chiefs. Even though we did just lose to them, is being able to isolate Kelsey a little bit, and those teams that really have quarterbacks that can move around, that middle opens up a lot. So I think we need to re-sign him. Um, and then obviously just killed it in the draft. They've done a really good job of drafting well, and that needs to continue. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I have trust in Joe Burrow as well. So I think I'm becoming one of those Bengals fans where it's like really line up anyone you can. As long as we have Joe Burrow, we have a chance.
Hmm.
We just need to get stronger and more depth. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Joe Burrow is one of the guys in the league that can win you a Super Bowl like on his own. Um, but you mentioned the draft, and as a 49ers fan, we don't really have any picks.
yeah,
They're all either in that Trey Lance deal or the Christian McCaffrey deal. We did get some back for the compensatory picks for um, other teams signing are like Mike McDaniel, now D'Amico Ryans. I think we only get one because we hit like a cap for the amount of compensatory picks you can get.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, all right, moving on. Um, do you have a Super Bowl prediction for me?
Yeah, I actually just sent one into my work today. We're doing a little pool. I'm actually going Eagles. Maybe I'm biased because I don't want to see Patty Mahomes win one. Um, I'm going Eagles solely on the fact both teams are super good, so I'm trying not to think too hard. Solely on the fact that that defense is unreal. I mean, you guys saw it firsthand, even though it was a four-string quarterback. And as good as the AFC is, I mean, the NFC had the defenses in the Niners and Eagles, and I think they're going to be able to not necessarily limit Mahomes, but I think they're going to be able to limit those wide receivers because at the end of the day, Mahomes doesn't have the best wide receivers and the run game. Kelsey's going to do his thing. I could see him going off, and Mahomes throwing for all their touchdowns. But I actually have a final score of 27-21 Eagles.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had the opposite. So
Yeah.
I'm 34-28 Chiefs. Um, like you, it may be a little bit biased, but the 49ers played both these teams this season, and the Chiefs just make good defenses look really bad. Like
Yeah.
Andy Reid's scheme, he's had 2 weeks to game plan for the Eagles now, maybe even more because they knew about a couple minutes into the 49ers game that they were probably going to be playing the Eagles. But he just will, what he did against the Niners at least was get the horizontal speed game going. So they were doing a lot of jet sweeps and handoffs to receivers or short passes to get the run defense of the 49ers kind of out of sync because they're expecting like a run up the middle. Then if they're getting it to the outside and getting it to their playmakers, it makes it a lot harder on that run defense.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, Kelsey against those linebackers is going to be a matchup to watch. They may try and double him, bracket him, put corner on him, put a safety on him. We'll see what ends up happening there. But you also mentioned a good point that the Eagles, uh, they're going to push around the Chiefs on defense. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. I have faith in Andy Reid. I think he's really good scheme and play caller. So we will see how it goes.
Yeah. It's one of those things too where we might be able to know who's going to win that game pretty quick, just based off of game plans. Two Super Bowls that really come to mind, even though they're great coaches, um, is just the Sean McVay losing to Belichick. That game from the start, Belichick had him out coached, even though Sean McVay is such a great coach. And then also Andy Reid and losing to the Bucks. Like Mahomes had his worst game of his career maybe in the Super Bowl. And it just goes to show how much his game plans are. So I do agree with you there. Where if the Chiefs are to win, if I had to pick a coach, I'm taking Andy Reid by a million over Sirianni.
Sirianni. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for us. I hope everyone has a good Super Bowl weekend, and we'll see you next time.